You know our next speaker from the quote-unquote small screen. Ashley Tisdale has starred in wildly popular shows and TV movies, playing every character from an enterprising teen as Maddie Fitzpatrick in The Sweet Life of Zack and Cody, to a scene-stealing antagonist as Sharpay Evans in High School Musical. But now she's stepping into a new role as a health and wellness industry trailblazer. As the founder of health, wellness, and beauty site Frenchy, she's disrupting a saturated content market by rejecting unattainable beauty standards, confronting mental health stigmas, and opening up about her own self-love journey. Needless to say, I'm so excited to dive into her incredible career of this successful multi-hyphenate, Ashley Tisdale. Welcome, Ashley. Okay, awesome. Well, welcome, Ashley. I'm so excited to be talking to you today. Let's kickstart with your latest venture, Frenchy. Congratulations. What compelled you to get into the content creation space?
You know, I had a blog a couple of years ago and I always loved it. Unfortunately, who I had teamed up with, it just wasn't something that we could move forward with because we just saw different visions for it. And I always wanted to kind of go back into that space, but I just didn't really know what that space was for me. And I think just over the last couple of years of my journey with mental health and really digging deeper into my anxiety and the depression that I had, I, was really just introduced to a lot of holistic medicine and doctors. And, basically over the last couple of years, just doing so much research and I have so much knowledge to share now. It was one of those things where before COVID happened, I launched it during, but this was planned months before. I was actually supposed to launch it before. But it was just something that I was really passionate about and excited to share. Just, I think for me, I love being able to share more personal things with my audience. And this was something that I felt like I could really give. And I felt like I could really give a lot of knowledge. And also for things that I couldn't, obviously, for me, I was I can bring experts in to help as well. So that's kind of where it started.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely not just a celebrity endorsed lifestyle site. You share these personal details about your own health and wellness journeys, and you open up about your experience with anxiety and depression. Why is this level of honesty and transparency so important to you to share?
I think in the beginning, when I did my album Symptoms was when I first came out talking about my mental health. And it's always nerve-wracking and scary to be very vulnerable with people. But I just knew in my heart, I had seen at that point so many people suffering. And I had a friend that I lost to depression. And so I just felt you know what, I think it's just people need to start talking about this more. We just need to come out, especially people that, my audience looks up to, and knowing that we aren't perfect and we go through the same things that, anybody goes through. And so I just felt really proud of that moment. And as scary as it was, I just felt really supported and more of a connection with my audience. I felt like I had more to talk about with them and they had more to talk about with me. And so with Frenchy, it was another thing that I was very vulnerable about. I was okay, I have done plastic surgery and it did not turn out well for me. And I just feel for the last, couple years, the thing that people don't talk about are the negative side effects of that stuff. And there are so many negatives. And I, for me, a lot of it had to do with I had food allergies, I had food sensitivities. I was constantly trying to figure out what was wrong with my stomach. I was always on test results completely fine, but something was just not feeling good. And I had implants for a long time and I decided to get them out. And I just felt it was something I wanted to share with my audience. And that's kind of where Frenchy was born.
Yeah, I think that's so important. I mean, you talk a lot about the unattainable beauty standards and the mental health stigmas that are tied to them. And especially for women, for so long thinking that's what normal looks like. Now we're in this world where we have these filters that make you look perfect. It's crazy. And the side effects of which we haven't even seen yet. But For you, you've cultivated this really genuine community online. What advice do you have for people who are looking to create an authentic audience? Where their community really is there for them and not just tuning in one and done.
I think it's just being authentic. You can't come out with something and create an authentic audience unless you are authentic yourself. And I think that for me, like I said, as much as it's a scary place to be vulnerable, I feel there's this drive in me that's like, no matter how scary it is, I can handle it. And I can handle if there's negative comments about it. I can handle if someone didn't agree with me. So why not come out? Because it's a lot of people really need to hear this. And I just felt like, especially in the health and wellness, obviously it's like not the first blog in health and wellness, but I felt like for me, if I'm going to do something where I'm promoting health and well-being, why would I not talk about my own personal journey with it and my own personal journey? And like, how are you, like, not that I'm negative towards plastic surgery, but I'm like, you have to love yourself first. If you're going to make decisions like that, most of the time you're making those decisions because there's insecurities, because I've been there. And so it's like, when you truly get to a point where you love yourself is when you're able to make a very rational decision. And I think when I was younger, I did not have a lot of self-love. I thought I did, but I think that it was such a great, like I look back and I'm just like, oh man, like I have scars from what I did. And I was like, gosh, my body was beautiful before. Why did I feel like I needed to do this? Now I have scars there. And if anything, I feel like those scars represent my journey. And it took me, they're beautiful just as they are. So it's like really loving yourself for everything, all of those moments and all of those like little scars, and just getting to that place. Like, yes, I wasn't there in my 20s, but being able to be like so happy with myself and my body is the journey in itself.
Yeah, totally. I mean, your 20s are just brutal, right? It's like you think you're doing all the things that you're supposed to be doing. And to your point, like you think you have a lot of self-love. And looking back, I probably had a very similar experience, just like feeling so negative about the way I looked all the time. And I think now seeing people like yourself come out and say, been there, done that, like been through it, I'm better, I'm stronger, and here's how, it's so important. And to your point, hard to do. But you recently announced that you're pregnant, so congratulations. How has your pregnancy influenced the way you view health, wellness, beauty, and your content strategy overall at Frenchy?
It's really cool because a lot of the time I think it's like in the past, it took other people getting pregnant to then go into the journey of non-toxic, because they're like now taking care of their baby and they're like, oh, I want everything that's perfect for them. And what I am so excited about was that this was my journey for the last couple years. So I've learned a lot through it. And even helping my friends who are brand new moms right now, there's so many decisions that you have to make. There's so many things about toothpaste and, like, do you go all natural for babies or listen to your pediatrician? And it's like, you really have to follow your intuition. And also, I always just say it's about moderation, because for a minute, when you first get involved in, clean, non-toxic, you're like, oh, you got to dive all the way in and that's the answer. And it's like, no, it's not the answer. It's all about moderation. I always think it's about balance. Yes, I use clean toothpaste. Yes, I just started clean beauty, but I still have some beauty items that are not so clean, and that's okay. It's just limiting what we are putting on our bodies and in our bodies. And so I'm excited. I think it's just really given me so much knowledge to prepare myself for what I'm about to go on.
So many products, so many questions, so many things. It's so true, but it's so exciting as well. And you're building this business alongside of it. Obviously creating a digital content brand is not easy. And I'm sure you've learned a lot of lessons along the way. What have been some of the mistakes and learnings you've learned since launching Frenchy?
I think, there really hasn't been any mistakes or learning lessons with launching Frenchy yet, because I've really just taken baby steps into everything. Like I wanted to put out something that was my journey and my story and to help other people in my audience. but I haven't looked at it as a business. It's actually been so creatively freeing to not look at it like that. I've been CEO of businesses before, of my makeup line Illuminate, and that's where I've made a lot of mistakes and a lot of hardship in that one. And so I think I just took everything from that. And, you know, I do believe in, yes, sometimes you fail, but it's how you get back up. And I think that it's what led me to Frenchy. Like in the moment when I was like feeling like a failure with my makeup company, because I was like trying to run this company as well as doing like 2 TV shows. And I do a lot of stuff. And I was like, I mean, I went to business school in the year that I like literally became CEO. I was like, knew how to do Shopify, put in the discounts. I was in a makeup trailer putting in the discount codes for Shopify. Like I was like, this is crazy trying to do this by myself. And I just felt like I learned so much, but I think that a lot of that is what led me to a lot of my stress and anxiety. And like, that's where I started diving into this journey, and what led me to Frenchy. So even in the moment when you feel like this is the end of my, like, what am I doing? Like, this is just, it's horrible. And you feel such a failure. You don't know where that moment is going to lead you to.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's so much pressure on being successful and good at every single thing that you do has to be a massive success. And sometimes it's the things that don't go the way you plan that teach you the lessons you need to go on to your next project. And like looking at Frenchy, to your point, like in my mind, I assume it's a business immediately because I'm like, oh, you're doing this, it has to be making money. But that's not necessarily, you know, the reason you start things. You know, with Create and Cultivate, you know, I started it made no money for like 3 years, and it was just a fun thing to do and get women together. And then like it turned into something beyond my wildest dreams. But like that's an amazing approach, I think, and it's a really smart approach from someone that's had the experiences to kind of bring them to that place.
Yeah, I feel like it was that pressure of having a business that I really was scared that I wasn't going to be creatively inspired again in like a company or a brand. And so when I started forming the idea of Frenchy, I really got excited, and I just felt like the pressure was off because I wasn't having to be like selling makeup and like, you know, like I just felt like it was just not right. And I just was excited to just be re-inspired again and take baby steps into what this will eventually become, which I don't know exactly yet, but I'm having so much fun doing it.
Yeah, and that's cool too. I mean, I think that's actually really inspiring, and I think I understand that so much because it's hard when the things that you love and the things that inspire you, that are your side hustles or hobbies, become your full-time jobs. You know, it puts a totally different spin on it.
Well, it's funny because I'm like really into interior design. And during quarantine, when it first hit, I was like, this is the most time I've ever had off in my life. And so I started to just like really finish up my backyard. And then I had friends asking me for help on like their places. So I was like putting boards together for them. And then I actually got a job to actually design someone's kitchen with my dad. And I was like, oh my God, I'm now getting jobs as an interior designer. And it's really funny how like once you start doing this as a job, it takes like the excitement away.
All the fun out of it.
It's not as fun anymore.
It was funny, I had an employee once that was like so into music and like would go to shows like all the time, and she worked for a record label and then came work for me, and I was like, are you sure you don't like this? It's like not music. And she was like, I realized like I love music so much, I don't want to work in the industry because it makes me not love it. Yeah. And I was like, that's so true. Like it's because you think you want to go work where you and the things that you love and you're passionate about and all these different things. But sometimes it can give you a different taste.
Just a side passion.
Sometimes just go to the concert. Sometimes just redecorate your living room. You don't have to be an interior designer.
Yeah, exactly.
But I feel like our society is so ingrained in that, like, oh, you like that, you're good at it, try and make money doing it. And it's like, that doesn't necessarily have, hobbies are good. Hobbies are good. So let's talk a little bit about wellness. What are some of the specific topics that you think don't get discussed often enough in the wellness space and that you're excited to talk about on Frenchy?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot, like I said, you know, just with plastic surgery, you know, just talking about kind of just the negatives, and there's positives, but I believe in like, we don't talk about the negatives enough. And I feel like even just Botox, like I don't necessarily believe in preventative Botox. I've never done Botox. And I had a friend who was a castmate on a movie that I did. And she was like, gosh, your forehead is just so like, she's like, there's no lines and I want to get Botox. I'm like, well, I've never gotten Botox. And I was like, and just so you know, once you do that, you have to continue to do it. And I think people don't like think about that. And so like, and she was really young. And I was like, I just feel like it's just not like, for me, I just am like, I don't judge anybody for what they want to do, but I'm just like, if you can just wait as long as you can, I would rather do that, just because I just feel like once you start, it's a whole thing that you have to keep up with.
For sure. As someone who gets Botox, it's true.
Yeah, I don't have any judgment over it. I'm just like, just wait till you really feel like you need to.
For sure.
And do the research on it too. And so she didn't even know that. She was like, I didn't know that you had to like keep up with it. And so I was like, yeah. She was very young, let me just tell you. So she was younger than me. And not that I'm like super young, but yeah, just I think more of kind of like the negative experiences, I would say, like for me in the past, I always thought, like, oh, this is going to make me, feel better about myself and my body if I get implants. And it's like, no, actually most of the time, like it's so deep an insecurity that like you have to do more work. Like it never truly makes you happy, I guess. And that is something, like I said, if you're going to make those decisions, like really know what you're getting into, really do the research on it. So I'm excited to talk more about that, but also just about self-love, because I feel like that's where everything starts. I feel like I just wrote a post the other day that hasn't come out yet, but about body shaming and how like even being pregnant, I get body shamed. It was like, even by like, family members of like cousins and stuff, they're just like, are you sure there's not twins in there? And I'm like, that does not make me feel great.
God.
I feel like I've popped way more than like even my friends who are a week behind me. And I had to stop myself and be like, we're all different. And that's
You're growing a human.
I know. The whole post is just about like how every single one of us, like our bodies are different. There is not one size fits all. As much as Brandy Melville wants to make people believe there's one size fits all, there is not. And it's just like, even when I was younger, the post was really just like talking about how, growing up and like training and working out and like eating like perfect, I always am like, gosh, if I was just had like less body fat and I was back to being like when I was 25, like super fit. The thing is that when I was 25, I was still thinking that same thing. So it's like a weird thing that we have. And then we kind of put that on each other as well. And I think it's just like, there's been so many times in the past where when I started just being actually even more happy in my life, and I wasn't my skinniest, that people thought I was pregnant years before I was actually pregnant. And I just feel like it's such a comment that needs to be like stopped. It's like, why do we feel like we can say that like about people? Like, why is it okay that, that we just don't love ourselves? It's like, when you can love yourself is when you can love another, they always say. And so I'm like, we can start to really love ourselves and our bodies. Maybe we won't be so judgmental over each other's body.
Yeah, that's really the hope. I mean, even this week, Lizzo came out and said, like, she really gets upset about the negative comments that are on her feed. And she's like the most confident out there person. And I think it's important for people to say things like that, because it's like, even the people that you see on the screen are so confident all the time, or, dating whoever. And you're like, how do I be like them? It's like, everyone's going through their own journey. It takes so much experience. And to your point, like where you are today in your journey, it takes time. And like, to your point, the scars and the experience and all those things that go along with it. But I think it's so important. And obviously you have millions of followers across all your different platforms, including TikTok, which I want to talk to you about, because I'm like, oh God, someone tell me how to do TikTok. But how do you keep your audience engaged and active? And how do you ensure that everyone in your community feels seen and heard?
Well, I try to post a lot, to keep them engaged. So obviously is one of the biggest things, is always posting. Unfortunately with TikTok, since I've been pregnant, I've been a little bit more lazy when it comes to the dances. They're just like getting harder and it's
Fair.
not easy with the belly. So, but I really obviously like love to comment back to people. I love to ask questions, especially on Frenchy. I really love having a platform where they can DM me, and because on my personal, I really have a lot of that stuff like privatized. But on Frenchy, I'm able to like actually communicate with them and see what they're saying. And also, I love that, when I'm trying to figure out like what's next for Frenchy, I'm able to just ask them, like, what do they want to see more of? And that keeps them engaged and seen and heard. And so, yeah, a lot of the subject matter that I do on Frenchy, I feel like they feel really seen. And it's just such a great connection. I feel it was kind of the weirdest timing launching in this moment, but it was like, I really kept saying like, in a moment where we're isolated and we want so badly to connect, I just felt like it was the perfect time to launch this. And I just feel so much more connected with my audience.
Yeah. And speaking of quarantine, how have you been taking care of yourself and your mental health during this time? Are there any like self-care rituals or practices you're using during this time?
I think all of that has gone up. Like, it's just like Sundays are now Mondays for like,
it's so true.
For me specifically, it's been a lot of meditation. Like I've always been a fan of meditation, but I make sure I do it every single morning. Especially when it first happened, obviously that could like, it makes your anxiety kind of come up with everything happening. And then you're like at your home. And like I said, I've never had this much time off in my life. So I was finding things that I could be passionate about, like interior design. I was doing things that I could fill my time with because I usually do like 4 things at a time. So it's been like, this is weird. And so, yeah, just finding those things that you're passionate, what you love. I really allowed myself in the beginning to calm down on the working out because I just felt like I wanted to take care of myself mentally versus like fully physically. So I was allowing myself to eat, comfort foods and, because it was just such a scary time, I think, in the very beginning. Still
For sure.
Obviously, but I think now that we've been in isolation for so long, we're kind of like now in a routine about it. So yeah, and it's like not being hard on yourself, that with work. Sometimes, especially now being pregnant, I have like baby brain and I'll be like, oh, you have this. And I'm like, oh my God. And I'll be like, oh. And so my schedule's gone a little kind of haywire, but I feel like it's just doing what makes you happy in this moment is what helps you through. And like I said, meditation has been such a thing. It's just really made me very present in this moment.
Yeah, I am horrible at meditation, but I'm so excited when other people can do it because I just get too distracted by every single thing. But I too, in the beginning, was on the comfort food train. Now I'm getting back into the working out of it all. But
once I hit my second trimester, I was like, it's time to work out.
Like I gotta do something here. No, it's so true. So obviously you've been in the limelight majority of your life, but you haven't really let fame or the spotlight change who you are. How have you remained true and authentic to who you are? And what advice can you share for women who are struggling with finding that in their own lives or careers?
I think for me, it's just like, well, a lot of it has to do with how I was raised. I have always been in the business since I was really young, but worked, I worked in clothing stores up until I was on a TV series and I went to regular school. And so having that background, I think is what really has grounded me. But also I think that I look at my priorities are a little bit different. Like for me, I don't measure success as, how many movies have done what or TV shows have done what. It's like, I'm a working actress. I always will be. I love to work. I love to act. I love to do a bunch of different things. And it's just like, I just love to work. And so for me, I just think of success as being like everything as a whole, like your family life, your personal life, what you do. It's not about like numbers and judging yourself on what, works and doesn't work.
Yeah, I think that's so true. I saw someone said the other day, like, there's two ways to kind of set up your life. One is goal-based and one is value-based. And goal-based is when you're like, if I make this much money, or if I do this many movies or win this many Oscars, like I'll be happy then. Whereas value-based is more like the people you surround yourself with, the type of person you are, and those things. And like, you'll always be happy if you're value-based versus goal-based, because it's something that you can actually achieve because it's you personally.
Achieve those goals even in a value-based situation.
Totally. Yeah. So. It's just, you don't put all your worth in one bucket, I guess.
Yeah.
So if you could go back to the beginning of your career with the knowledge that you have now, the journey that you've been on, what advice would you give your younger self?
Well, I mean, early in my career, I would have to say, like, because I was 3 when I started. So I should probably say when I hit success, maybe around like when I was like 18 or 19, I guess I would just say that something that I've learned, just to have fun, and to not take things so seriously, like I think that a lot of the time we get into these modes of just like kind of like working, and we forget to just kind of have fun with it and have fun about it. And we think sometimes, like when I was younger, I was like, okay, well, if I do that movie or if I do that, like we're trying to like, I don't know, like make decisions just based off of where we think our futures are going to go. And I think that for me, it's like, just kind of lighten up about it. I think sometimes that stuff can like stunt us, because I'm a very self-aware person. And so having too much awareness can sometimes make you like not take something or be fearful about taking a project on. And I think that the most, when I stopped doing that, when I started being more open and being like more freeing in that way, is when I feel like some of the best stuff has happened. So
true. So what's next for Frenchy? What's the vision for the brand moving forward?
Right now, I think that we're just still, like really growing our audience. It's only been a couple months. I think that eventually I would love to do collaborations with other clean brands that I love. So that's something that would be really fun. But we're just, still, I think, growing and learning. And I don't like to get too many steps ahead. I like to just kind of be in the moment and kind of go from there.
Yeah. What are some of your favorite clean products?
Oh, I mean, Branch Basics are like everything we use in the house.
Love. Yeah.
My favorite. They're so great. Another one is, man, there's so many. I love Clean Beauty. That's what I really got into during quarantine, because I was so much about my beauty. Like, no, this is my routine. And then I was like, you know what? I got to start like diving in and trying. And there are so many great ones out there. Kosas, Ilia Beauty, Milk Makeup. So those are some of my favorites as well. I
love Kosas so much.
Yes. Yeah. And also Green Pan. I made my kitchen all non-toxic. And
oh, wow.
I renovated my kitchen over the last year. And so, I got all non-toxic products in there.
Okay. Have you switched to natural deodorant?
That was one of the first things I've ever done.
Okay.
I switched natural to toothpaste and deodorant was, as I mentioned on Frenchy, I think that the only way to change to non-toxic is to know it's a lifestyle, not a diet. And so it's never good to just like jump all the way in. And so over the last couple of years, I started probably 5 years ago with the deodorant. And now I've really found Corpus is one of my favorites.
Okay.
Before I used Tarte, which was really good. But it was really funny because I was just like, I especially worked out a lot, and I was like, I don't smell so great after I work out.
No, but it takes a while to find one.
No, I know. Corpus has been amazing. That like gets you through everything.
Okay.
I really, that is one of the, I think for women, the most important thing to change right away.
100%. I know it was funny because as soon as quarantine hit, I was like, maybe I'll start the transition, because it's like, I'm not going to see anyone. So it's kind of like a good, I really like Mega Babe Rosy Pits. I don't know if that's a really good one to check it out. Cool. Yeah, it's good. Okay, so let's end with some rapid fire sentence finishers. Are you ready? Okay. The highlight of my career to date has been?
I would say the highlight of my career to date has been probably, oh man, I would say Frenchy. And like the last couple projects, I would say that, you know, and Symptoms. I think Symptoms was the start of it. Was
Totally.
being open and being authentic to myself. Obviously, I've played characters in the past. People knew me to a point, but it wasn't until Symptoms. I would say that's the highlight because that was like all co-written by me. It really was my baby, and it was like me being completely vulnerable and authentic with my audience for the first time.
Totally. My number one money tip for entrepreneurs is
definitely always think of yourself as a startup first. Like think of yourself as a startup. Don't think of the end goal, because sometimes you know that's kind of like that's what I did with Illuminate, was that I was taking over a company that was like had a big company attached to it, thinking that I needed to be that, and it really was starting up, and I should have just thought of it that way. So really think of yourself as a startup until you're not.
That's great advice. A fellow female entrepreneur I admire is?
I would say I admire Gwyneth Paltrow, you know, especially with what she's done with Goop. I remember when she launched that so many years ago. And I find that to be really inspiring because a lot of actors, it took them a long time to even get on social media. It took them so long to get on Instagram because they just like took themselves so seriously. And that's like a perfect example. It's like here Gwyneth was like, oh, I'm going to create this, you know, this blog. And it was just like something that everyone was like, what? Like Gwyneth Paltrow, like the Oscar winner is doing this. And it's like, that's what you have to do. You have to do that. You know, you have to be open to things that are just different.
Absolutely. The number one thing COVID has taught me is?
The number one thing COVID has taught me is what has COVID taught me? That I actually can spend a lot of time in the house.
Yeah.
I used to think like, I used to just think that I was, you know, I honestly just felt I could not do work out of my home. And it's amazing that how COVID has taught us we can do so much out of our houses. It's crazy.
Yeah, no, it's so true. And last one is
Success is, I would say, everything that you're a part of, you know, whether that's your family and your work. I think it's all encompassing. It's not just your company and your brand. I think it has to do with everything that's in your life.
Totally agree. Well, thank you so much for the time, Ashley.
Thank you.